Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, Oregon is a frontier state. We respect individualism, the right to freedom, and the idea of exploring without boundaries. The internet should support this, create, encourage, and grow opportunities. It should allow us to develop the potential of all of our citizens. In Oregon, we can't keep the internet free and open on our own, and unfortunately, we can't make net neutrality a reality for all Americans. As we have done so often in the past, though, Oregon can lead by example. Frankly, colleagues, I don't think it should be our job to regulate the internet. In fact, I think this is an issue that should be handled by the federal government. I think it's the job of the federal government to ensure consumers are protected online. Unfortunately, those at the top of the federal government don't agree right now. What we should be doing in Oregon is using our power as a market participant to ensure that the state of Oregon only engages in net neutral contracts. When the FCC saw fit to repeal the net neutrality protections, they chose to side with corporations over individuals. And now there are fewer than 60 days left until our free and open internet will be in jeopardy. This is an urgent matter that must be addressed. So, colleagues, I think we've been given no choice but to act to protect Oregonians. We can take steps forward in our state to do the right thing, even if the federal government is not. Thankfully, our United States Senate delegation agrees. I've worked with both Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden on this issue, and both have submitted written testimony in OLAS. Senator Merkley writes, consumers should have access to the internet on the same terms as large institutions, and small technology entrepreneurs should be able to compete on a level playing field with large technology and telecommunications companies. The FCC's actions are unacceptable, and we should have a federal net neutrality rules to protect democracy. However, in the absence of federal rule, I applaud Oregon's effort to step in where the federal government has left a gap. Senator Wyden writes, as you know, Congress is not right now acting as a well-oiled machine. Oregon should not wait for Congress to come back to its senses. I encourage you to support a strong, enforceable net neutrality protection at the state level, including these legislative efforts. Colleagues, this bill demands that the state of Oregon put its money where its mouth is, using taxpayer dollars to protect the people who pay taxes. This bill requires state divisions or subdivisions to only purchase broadband access from internet providers who are in full compliance with the net neutrality provisions. This means transparency and network management practices, full access to all websites, and equal traffic speeds. This means no limitation, no censorship, no throttling or slowing down of access. And you know what? The internet service providers are already doing this thanks to years of regulations requiring them to operate this way. All this legislation does is to ask the ISPs to maintain the status quo, keep doing what they've been doing. We are committed to do everything we can to make sure Oregonians have equal access to a free and open internet. I urge an aye vote. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, for this spirited debate. I would just like to say for the record that I am more than willing to work with any task force that happens between now and the next session that wants to continue this dialogue. I think it's an important conversation. And I genuinely believe and agree with the representative from District 55 that we all have an interest in creating an internet that's open and free for everyone. In fact, in a 2017 poll from the University of Maryland School of Public Policy, it resulted in overwhelming bipartisan support for keeping net neutrality. The respondents were given a statement, pro and con, that were both reviewed by experts on those sides of the debate to ensure that it was a balanced and accurate statement and that the strongest arguments were presented. And 83% opposed repealing net neutrality, including 75% of Republicans and 89% of Democrats, 86% of independents. So we know this is an issue that is on the mind of Oregonians and of Americans. So as I close out the debate today, I want to make sure again that I put a few things on the record, particularly how we see the role of different parties in implementing this bill. Again, this bill is intended to create transparency for both the public and the state when it comes to internet services we are receiving. The bill makes a complaint-driven process with actions only being taken if a report is made that an ISP is in violation of the state contract. It is not intended that this bill create a significant burden on public bodies, but rather that it gives them leverage that they need to insist on net neutrality in their contracts. It's not the intent of this bill to create a private right of action against the public bodies themselves if they fail to negotiate net neutral services with their provider. We've been talking a lot about the Public Utility Commission being given the authority to regulate the internet, so I want to make it clear what their role will be. The PUC will not directly regulate internet service providers under this bill. The PUC's primary purpose will be to bring the existing expertise to bear on making rules and defining the terms necessary for the law to be implemented and enforced. As a practical matter, that means the PUC's earliest step will likely be rulemaking about the form of public disclosures required under Section 1, Sub 5, Sub B. It will be up to the PUC to prioritize how it meets these limited obligations. The PUC may choose to conduct rulemaking and make determinations in response to complaints or petitions, rather than addressing some sort of hypothetical problem before they arise. This bill does not include any provision under where the PUC would pre-clear contracts or providers or otherwise keep a list of preferred providers. Again, we've heard some concern from small local ISPs that even if they're doing nothing wrong, they could potentially be penalized for the actions of their long-haul providers, those mid-mile folks that they contract with. And again, as we heard earlier, this bill does not do that. Companies will not be penalized for the actions of other companies. And in close, colleagues, I want to tell you about some folks who came to testify in the hearing. There were 3 young women from Mount Tabor Middle School, one named Athena who testified in front of the committee. She's legally blind, and she told the committee that the internet is the place she goes to learn. That's where she gets all of her books, and she's worried about access to her textbooks if the net neutrality is repealed. And in her words, she said it could be a horrifying step backwards. Her classmates, Luca and Lola, came before us and passionately argued to fight for these protections. And in the end, Athena said, when kids get involved, you know somebody really screwed up. So, colleagues, I think she might be right. I urge an aye vote.